Hello everyone, Linn Warfare. Welcome to the week 4 and 5 episode for the Metamorph in 3.9 Challenge League. As always, I'll try to provide a text release for this episode a few days after the video release. Creating the entire video as a write-up takes a few extra days of work. I sincerely apologize for this inconvenience. For viewers that prefer an audio-only version of the Chaos Report, you'll be able to find it over on my Patreon. Don't worry, the audio-only version is entirely free for now. This is a service that was requested, and I don't have any current plans to lock it behind a paywall. You'll be able to find a link to the text and voice-only versions in the description down below once they've been completed and uploaded. The audio-only version should be available immediately upon release, however. A quick reminder, you can also find the timestamps to each section in the pinned comment down below. Stop asking me for them! Do keep in mind that this entire video is based on educated guesses or predictions, and as such they might not be entirely accurate. Furthermore, I might miss a thing or two that seem obvious to many, and for that I apologize. It's hard to cover everything. What that means is, of course, invest at your own risk. With the usual disclaimer out of the way, let's just jump right in. The first segment breaks down currencies and commodities, such as the new Exalted orbs and fragments. I'll be giving a quick overview on the most important currencies during this past week, and predictions on how they'll continue to progress in the following one. Exalted orbs, as always, are first. The OG Exalted orb has followed our predictions from 2 weeks ago pretty much to the letter. It had dropped down to a predicted price point of about 110 chaos, and then saw a short period of rest there in anticipation for its rapid rise to a current 137 chaos price point. This is typical behavior for Exalted orbs by now, which is why our predictions from last episode were able to be this accurate. While those drops and rises are artificial, meaning that they aren't a result of a sudden oversupply or demand or anything like that, they always occur around the same time and in the same manner. Following the current trend and assuming that the new orbs don't impact the usual behavior, we'll see Exalted orbs remain at this rough price point for quite some time. This period of stability usually lasts for a few weeks, but can sometimes be cut short to about 6 to 7 days, until the next artificial drop and rise cycle begins. Also possible is another spike to the high 150 chaos region, however. It is uncertain if that will be the case due to the inherent value lost in Exalted orbs due to the multi-mod nerf. As a result, expect them to stick around the same price point as they are now for a while, but don't necessarily hesitate to convert all of your chaos into Exalted orbs if you have too much of it. But of course, as always, make sure to check those prices on the daily, as I can't possibly give you 100% accurate predictions all the time via 1 per week video series. As for the new Exalted orbs and Awaken orbs, let's take a look at them. The Hunter's Exalted orb has continued to be the most expensive orb out of all the new ones. It is currently sitting at around 340 chaos after a rather drastic spike in the middle of last week. Still the most popular orb for crafting high-ticket items due to the Hunter's inherent mod pool being extremely worthwhile for most, if not all, item classes in the game, it's continued to hold its high value throughout the turbulent last weeks. They've already begun their way back towards the previous prices, as the sudden spike was likely caused by a short-term content creator spike or similar outside circumstances. They are projected to continue falling until they hit their pre-spike prices of about 300 chaos. As such, keep an eye on the prices and make sure to double check them before you buy or sell any of those orbs in the near while. The Awaken orb is currently sitting at around 220 chaos and has seen a rather turbulent few weeks as well, with a bottom out at last episode's 190 chaos price point, followed by a rather drastic spike and another fall that is projected to continue in the next little while, likely until it hits the 190 chaos mark again. They are still extremely powerful and popular for crafting, but with the recent 3.9.2 patch, the amount of supply has increased drastically, due to the Saris boss fight becoming an absolute joke in terms of difficulty. Pretty much everyone can now easily acquire them, so the potential for the prices to stay high has diminished as a result. Players are still able to spam white maps to rapidly run boss encounters in quick succession, which further exasperates the problem. Until that is fixed, we're unlikely to see them ascend to extreme high prices in the terms of prices. As such, keep an eye on any potential future patch notes and see if it seems like the white map strat is going to be fixed. Until then, proceed as normal. Crusader and Warlord's Exalted orbs have also seen a similar price graph and are now at 185 chaos and 225 chaos respectively. The Warlord's orb is currently on a downwards trend towards the 190 chaos range. It is likely that it will be trending towards the prices of the Crusader orb in the near future. The Crusader's orb has remained rather steady at its price point at around 180 to 190 chaos, has slightly dropped bit by bit over the last few days however. It's projected to continue its slow price dip, but overall remain steady in the following week, barring any unforeseen circumstances. Lastly, the Redeemer's Exalted Orb. It has also seen a similar graph to the previous orbs, with a large rise at around the middle of last week, with a current drop towards its pre-spike prices. It has found itself currently at 190 chaos, but is projected to continue its fall, much like the other orbs as well. The mods for the Redeemer have slowly found more and more uses, as the Awakener orb has become more easily to acquire for most players. The Redeemer doesn't have any item-defining mods like the Hunter does, for example, but it has amazing auxiliary mods, which are great for accentuating double-influenced items. As a result, they've seen a general increase in popularity and will likely remain as a solid secondary influence option for the remainder of the league. As always, if you intend on buying any of these orbs just covered, make sure to keep an eye on this extremely volatile market. Alteration orbs have also seen a turbulent few weeks. They've dipped down into the minimum ratio of 1 to 9.5, but have also seen a spike during the same time as the previous orbs. They're currently in a drop and have found themselves at a 1 to 7 ratio, but are projected to fall farther, down towards a 1 to 9 ratio most likely. Alteration orbs in general have seen a decrease in their use cases since last league, due to the nerf of multi-mods, and as such, have lost a bit of their overall use value. However, the new Exalted orbs are shoring up some of the deficit, as it is clearly visible by the similar spike in prices. They are inherently linked up with the new orbs and as such, should be treated as an extension of them, rather than their own unique currency, if you want to properly make use of them. If the Exalted orbs drop in prices, expect to be able to bulk up on Alteration orbs as well. If they rise, don't expect to be able to get Alteration orbs for cheap either. Last on our list, the Ancient orbs. They have seen a massive increase since the last episode, which I mentioned would be an unlikely possibility. They are currently sitting at around 56 chaos, after having reached a peak of 65 chaos during Thursday and Friday, and slowly falling off afterwards. The rapid rise was very likely caused by the Exalted orbs gaining a massive price increase, which resulted in the Headhunter, which is always priced in Exalted orbs, to also gain a massive amount of chaos value. This ultimately results in Ancient orbs also seeing an equally large rise, as they're directly bound to the chaos equivalent prices of the Headhunter. They are bound to return to a lower price point in the coming days, as the Headhunter's Exalted orb prices are slowly adjusting back downwards, meaning the Chaos to Ancient ratio will also fall over time. I would recommend dumping your stock, if you still have any while they're still worth this much, as it's very unlikely we'll see another major increase in their prices, until the last few weeks of the league. For the commodities section, we'll be covering the different fragment pieces, as well as the new synthesis and Guardian map drops. I'll quickly update you on the prices for the different maps and fragments for this week. Shaper fragments range from 34 to 50 chaos, meaning that one Shaper set will cost you around 150 to 200 chaos at average. This is pretty much the exact same price as during the last episode, plus and minus a little bit here and there. On the other hand, however, the fragments dropped by Shaper, which unlock Uber Elder, have increased to a 179 to 187 chaos price point. This means that for simply being the Shaper and having a chance for any of his drops, you're basically paying nothing, as the Uber fragment will recoup the entire or at least 99% of the cost of the Shaper fragments. As a result, farming Shaper for some of his drops or his hideout could be extremely profitable at the current moment, as it's basically pure profit on every single run. As mentioned, the Uber fragments provided by Shaper are sitting at around 179 to 187 chaos each, while the ones provided by Elder are sitting at around 25 to 30. That means one Uber slot will cost you about 400 chaos at average. This extremely high entry price has led to similarly high prices on most 3-mod Watcher's Eyes. Especially the good ones are extremely pricey this league, much more so than usual. The other Uber Elder uniques have dropped in prices over time, and it's hard to really turn a profit with Uber Elder runs anymore, unless you rely on getting a decent 3-mod Watcher's Eye every once in a while, of course. This results in my recommendation to stay away from Uber Elder as a farming method. Look for other ways to make currency instead. The Elder fragments themselves are sitting at around 24 to 39 chaos each, meaning that one set will cost you around 120 to 140 chaos, which is pretty much the same as during the last episode. Same recommendation as last episode too, obviously. I would still run your own Elder sets and sell the resulting items to other players. Some of the unique items are worth quite a bit, and especially Watcher's Eyes are in high demand as mentioned earlier. The Uber Elder fragments aren't really worth a lot, but they can recoup 1 or 2 of the fragments needed to run Elder, so the actual cost of running an Elder goes down to below 100 chaos each. I would expect them to stick around this price point just like they have been for pretty much the beginning of the league. Lastly, the Synthesis unique maps are all sitting at around 45 to 50 chaos right now. The Cortex, on the other hand, has risen to a 337 price point as a result of the general increase in Exalted orb value. As explained on some of the items earlier, this is due to the fact that the Cortex is priced in Exalted orbs, so the chaos equivalent prices will rise if the Exalted orb gains value. Same recommendation as always, the map drops overall are very worth it to run for yourself if you're keen on gambling, as the synthesis modifiers provided by the maps can be a real hit or miss. Especially the Herald Rings, which drop from the bosses, net upwards of a few Exalted orbs in prices, sometimes even dozens, if you find the perfect combination of implicits. The prices for the Cortex will likely continue to fluctuate around the area it's sitting at right now, with a potential slight rise in the next following ways. The prices for the synthesis maps in general will likely slowly decline on the other hand. With those currencies and commodities covered, let's move on to our unique item watch list. First up on our list, the double-socketed Tomb Fists. The Tomb Fists have recovered from the price drop we covered in the last episode and have returned to a 207 price point. Comparatively to last league, however, they are nowhere near the prices they should be this late into the league. This is very likely due to the addition of the new Influence mod pools and Awakened support gems, which all offer great alternatives for the Tomb Fist's abilities. As a result, the demand for them is vastly lower compared to last league. They're likely going to stick around the 150 to 200 chaos price point for now, but might see a dip in the near future. The Void Fletcher unique quiver is up next on the list. The quiver has seen extremely turbulent prices in the past week, and days even, and is currently sitting at 315 chaos, but it is likely going to drop before the end of the week. The quiver is still a large staple of most meta bow builds in Metamorph League, as it offers much needed single target potential and flat damage to cold based bow builds. Furthermore, the quiver is also locked behind the Uber boss fight, which is very expensive to access as covered in the commodities section, and as a result, it has a comparatively low supply count. Lastly, successfully corrupted Void Fletchers are way more expensive than the base version of the unique item. They are easily scoring prices upwards of 8x at the current moment. This, in return, makes the base item also more expensive. It will likely continue its price fluctuations for a while, as demand and supply is both heavily limited. The last unique on the list is the Coast Breeze Malice. It is currently sitting at around 5x, or about 686 chaos, after a heavy price drop around the middle of last week. This was caused by Exalted orbs rapidly rising in price, and was simply an adjustment to the new chaos values. The overall chaos value of the sword has not changed much from the last episode. It sat at around 640 chaos then, so it has gained a slight amount of value over those weeks. The sword is extremely popular at the moment, as more and more players are switching their miners over to cast on crit assassin builds, with the increased budget and resulting power. This will give the Coast Breeze Malice a certain degree of stability in its pricing for the next little while, so don't expect any large price changes outside of the current 10 to 20 chaos fluctuations. Now, moving on to our third segment for this video, the meta-analysis. Since last episode, the latter has progressed to the level 96 to 100 area, which means that the vast majority of builds is no longer represented on it. As a result, it will be impossible to properly look at and predict the meta for the remainder of the league, outside of extrapolating the top builds towards the lower level ranges and guesstimating. Consider this your warning, as information presented here will only be a partial truth and might not 100% represent the actual meta. Necromancers are still sitting at around a 29% play rate, which is exactly where they were last episode. The Saboteurs, on the other hand, have dropped off from an 11% play rate down to 7%. The missing percentages have been distributed towards the Guardian and Assassin Ascendancies, which are sitting at 9% and 12% respectively. As mentioned with the last episode, a lot of players have opted into the easy way out, namely summoner builds to deal with the high difficulty of this League plus expansion combo, so Necromancers are still by far the most popular choice. Furthermore, Assassins have gained a large amount of popularity due to the easily accessible power of cast on crit builds, especially using Coast Breeze Malice and a Cyclone setup. One last thing of note is that for the first time since the start of the league, Raised Zombies has been overtaken by another skill. Cyclone is the new king of the meta, primarily being used for the previously mentioned cast on crit setups, but it's also a popular choice for Herald of Agony builds and melee Impale builds as well. With those parts covered, the crafting recommendations continue to fall towards summoner gear, as well as assassin-focused gear for cold-focused cast on crit builds. Especially valuable for those assassin builds are rings with Assassin's Mark, as they heavily increase the amount of damage that will be dealt through the cock setups. As for the Atlas analysis, there's not much to talk about anymore. I've covered the Atlas in 2 out of the 4 previous episodes, as well as always giving small mini-guides in this section. As a consequence, please feel free to check out the previous videos or text releases for your Atlas guide needs. One thing of note, however, that might not be used or be known to all, is that white maps are still extremely useful for speed farming the Exiles and Awakener boss fights. Many high-level players are currently resorting to speed farm the bosses for the Exalted drops and the guaranteed high eye-level bases that they inevitably drop as well. To use this method, simply spawn an influence in any sector, and then run a white version of any of the given maps in this sector. Simply run towards the first 4 to 5 packs, nuke them, and if the Exile hasn't shown up by then, leave the map and open a new one. This is similar to the Glacier farming back in Legion, so it requires a decent map pull through consistently, but you only need any given white map in the sector instead of one specific Glacier map. This might be fixed in a future update, but until it is, this is by far the best money-making strategy if it comes down to the new Atlas and its maps or bosses specifically. Some players can spawn an Awakener boss fight once every 20 minutes, which means that they can drop something valuable from him, like the Savior Unique Sword, which seems to have an about 1 in 100 drop rate once every 33 hours of playtime at average, while players that are not abusing this flaw in the mapping system will likely never be able to acquire one this league outside of an extremely lucky drop. With the meta and Atlas analysis finished, let's jump right into the strategy discussion for this week. I'll be covering the forms of passive income in this current league, as many new players aren't fully aware of them or aren't aware of how profitable they can be. There's about 4 main ways to make passive currency in the current league: gem leveling, prophecies, map returns, and master missions. But before we jump into any of them, a quick note on what passive income actually means. This passive income is income where you do not actively make the choice to engage with it for a long time, but rather set it up once and reap the benefits at a later time. This makes the income passive, unlike something akin to Delve, where you actively go into the mine to make a profit, for example. Now let's get into it. The first and most commonly forgotten about way to make passive currency is to level up gems in your offhand weapons. For the new players, you actually have 2 different weapon sets available to you at any given time. You can access the offhand weapon set by clicking the tiny Roman style 2 in your character screen. This will instantly switch out your main and offhand weapon with the second set that is placed in there. The important part here is that whatever gems are inside of those weapons when you swap them will still gain experience, even if you aren't actively using the weapon set itself. As a result, you can simply offload up to 6 gems that you want to level, switch to your main weapon set, and forget about them until they reach max level. Afterwards, you can take them out, either sell them each with 1 gem cutter's prism to get them back to level 1 with 20% quality and redo the process, immediately sell them to other players, or attempt to val them to gain a +1 level corruption. This method of passive currency is extremely worthwhile with the Enlightened support gem, which starts out at level 1 and can reach a maximum level 3 by natural means. Valing can get it up to level 4, and those specific level 4 Enlightens are worth around 7 Exalted orbs each, and you can level up 6 of them at a time. This can also be used to 2020 your own gems that you use for your own build. This will save you a decent chunk of currency in the long run, as you'll be gaining the experience for them either way, so you might as well level up your own and quality your own gems while you're at it, through the previously mentioned vendor recipe. The second method is prophecies. A lot of players, and even veterans, heavily underestimate how valuable it can be to simply make sure that your prophecy wheel is always filled up. Many prophecies in the game are worth a decent chunk of chaos, while only very few are worth multiple Exalted orbs. They also don't really cost anything to set up in the first place. Simply talk to Navali and ask her to join your hideout. Place her close to your stash and map device, and re-up your prophecies in between each map you run. This will make sure that you'll continuously cycle through the prophecies, which will also benefit your overall currency per hour gain due to increased quantity from some of them. Once you land on one of the prophecies that are worth something, simply seal them and sell them to other players. It is definitely worth buying a ton of silver coins in bulk, so you don't run out and you're continuously able to cycle them. To check which prophecies are worth keeping, Simply take a look at the top 15 to 20 on the PoE Ninja list and remember the names. The rest can just be used as an additional quantity for your own maps and they will still benefit you greatly. The third method is map returns. This is a bit of an odd one as you're actively engaging with maps to get map returns, but it counted as passive income as most of the time the map returns will not be considered by most players as the primary objective. All the items you gain from a map count towards your overall wealth, whether it be fragments, map drops, currency drops, or random items. A ton of those returns will simply get thrown into random tabs and forgotten about, especially the map tab is the worst offender for that behavior. In order to maximize the passive income this can generate, simply set up a few 5 to 10 chaos dump tabs where you can quickly dump an unwanted item into, instead of having them disappear into your stash forever. Make sure to not set your minimum dump tab to something you actually wouldn't leave a map for, however, as otherwise you won't gain any benefit from it and you'll make trade even more miserable for others. Don't forget to clear out this tab every once in a while as well, if stuff stops selling. Simply grab all the things that didn't sell and throw them into the respective collection tabs after a while, to free up space for new passive income to accumulate. Many players simply forget that these items exist once they leave their inventory, so they don't actually realize on how much wealth they are sitting, simply because they never bothered to convert them into actual usable currency in the first place. This basic system will ensure that you will gain some additional income while you're mapping. Also, don't be afraid to undersell some of those maps, fragments, or items that you'd normally never use or sell to begin with. Every single item you sell that way would have just landed in the infinite depths of your stash anyway, so don't try to squeeze out every last little bit of chaos out of every single one of those items. A quick dump sell here is a lot better than a slow trickle of income from it. The last method is master missions. Well, this is not exactly a secret or anything like that. Master missions are extremely worthwhile. And that does not just include Zana, June, and Nico. Einhar and Alva are two heavily underused masters, and as a result, many players will likely have saved up an absolute ton of them. You can, and absolutely should, monetize those saved up master missions if you need the income. Especially Alva's Temple can offer up some very nice extra income through the Corruption Chamber and decent temple items from the Omnitech. The new Exalted orbs have given the temple items a whole new breath of life when it comes to their values in the current economy. So don't leave them on the floor. Identify them for some of the mods, such as Energy Shield, Mana, Conversion, etc., as some of the new influence mods can actually stack with those temple mods and create some absolutely nasty and very unique items as a result. As such, make sure to use your stored up master missions and potentially offer to sell them to other players. Einhar is a perfect example of a master that doesn't get used by a lot of players, even though many would pay a pretty price for it. As to what price people are willing to pay, you'll just have to offer and see if anyone wants to buy them for the price you have in mind. I would recommend offering to sell them in bulk, for example. 10 red tier missions in a row, for example. That way you can ask for group prices and make a decent amount of currency in a short while. You could probably easily ask for 20 or 30 chaos per person in such a master mission sale. For Alva, you want to prepare the temple beforehand, and sell the Corruption Chamber and tier 3 sacrifice uses to other players. I've seen them be sold for around 100 chaos to an Exalted orb each before, but prices will vary based on time of day, and as well as availability, of course. There are, of course, other methods of passive income, such as selling items, preparing crafts, etc., but we won't be covering those today, as they don't quite fit the theme of new player income I was trying to convey in this episode. We might cover them in an upcoming episode, and I'll be giving some advice on how to make those methods work for you the best, if that is the case. This concludes the basic rundown of the passive currency income. I hope this was informative, and you will be able to take advantage of some of them if you are in need of currency. They can not just be used this league, but pretty much all methods mentioned here will be used in future leagues as well. If there are any questions left about the passive income, feel free to leave a comment down below. I'll try to answer them as soon as possible. Additionally, if you have something you would like me to cover on next week's strategy or discussion segment, feel free to leave it in the comments down below as well. This can range from anything data related, over strategy research, to simply statistical breakdowns of certain metas or item drop rates or anything like that. I'll try my best to oblige any requests. Otherwise, I'll simply be covering whatever comes up in the meantime in the next week's episode. Now, for the last of the segment, I'll be covering the weekly delve update, as well as a bunch of rapid fire tips and tricks for this following week. First up, the delve update. Comparatively to last episode, we have only seen slight changes for the fossil prices. The best fossils to farm are still the serrated and corroded fossils, but enchanted fossils have also finally caught up. Etheric, perfect, bound, and prismatic fossils are following closely after those. My recommendations, however, have shifted due to the overall price differences in fossils. I now recommend the Frozen Hollow as the #1 farming area, especially due to their farming simplicity, as the fractured walls are easy to find and they drop a ton of pristine prismatic combos in addition to the very expensive serrated fossils. My second recommendation would be the Magma Fissure, as it's equally as easy to traverse as the Frozen Hollow and offers a great selection of fossils, including pristine, prismatic, and the new enchanted fossils. The current prices for this week's top fossils are as follows. Serrated fossils have risen to 15 chaos. Corroded fossils have dropped to 7 chaos, while enchanted fossils have risen to 7 chaos. They are now tied for second place. Perfect fossils have dropped slightly to 6 chaos. Etheric, prismatic, bound, and shadowing fossils are all at 5 chaos each, and pristine fossils have slightly dipped as well to 3 chaos. Happy fossil hunting, and good luck in your delves. Now getting into the rapid fire tips and tricks section. Spam run blighted maps. As mentioned in the last episode as well, these are still extremely profitable. Simply buy a ton of them and run them whenever you find the time to AFK in a few maps. The returns are absolutely bonkers through the Awakening level 8 bonuses and are definitely worth the 5 minutes spent on each map. I would mostly recommend low yellow blighted maps as they are the cheapest, but you can also still turn a major profit on the high level red ones. It all just depends on your own starting budget really. I recommend 20%ing your blighted maps, anointing them with 3 teal oils, and then throwing them into the map device as a white map. The extra quantity added by alching them is usually not worth the risk of bricking the map as a direct result of the difficulty from the mods being added. Check your menagerie. It is now about 5 weeks into this league, which means everyone should have reached red maps by now, or at least should have done a lot of mapping. During your maps, you've probably encountered Einhar a lot and haven't really thought about it. Make sure to open your bestiary recipe list and see what kind of beasts you've captured in your time mapping. Some of them are extremely worthwhile to sell to other players, while also not being too incredibly rare that you would have never gotten them. Simply go to PoE Ninja and check which beasts are worth a decent amount. You can seal them using a bestiary orb, which you can buy from Einhar in the menagerie itself. Lastly, convert your unused Azerite into Chaos. It's the same recommendation as in the last 2 weeks, but it really is worthwhile if you've been delving a lot. Simply talk to Nico in the delve area and buy his resonators. The current best Azerite to Chaos ratio is the primitive Chaotic Resonator. You can translate 300 Azerite into 2 easy Chaos by buying these and selling them to other players. You can even increase this profit margin further by selling them in bulk, easily being able to ask for like 3 or 4 Chaos a piece if you've got a decent sized stack to offer. I would definitely recommend doing this if you have been reaching those like 400, 500 delve depths at this point. And with those last few tips wrapped up, I'll be ending this Chaos report. I hope this video was informative and you learned something from it that you can apply to your own game. Please let me know if I missed anything or you would want me to talk about anything in specific that I might not have covered. If you want to support the creation of these videos, feel free to check out my Patreon and maybe consider signing up for it. You can find a link to it in the description down below. Any and all support is highly appreciated. If you have any suggestions for Patreon rewards that you guys would like to see, please let me know in my Discord's feedback channel down below in this video or on my Twitter. I read all of your comments, Jesus. You can find a link to my Twitter and Discord down below in the description as well. And of course, don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell thingamajig, like or dislike the video, and check me out over on twitch.tv/lunarwolf. I stream pretty much every day, and that's pretty much it. Great background noise, I've been told. You can find a link to the stream in the description down below. And with that, thanks for watching, and keep farming those Exalts.